tree. So inside this, you basically have a server. You have some kind of databases. You have some kind of databases, and then you have someone who wants to access that particular server from the outside of the network. Now here, I need to mention this is going to be the office network. Okay. Any of the office network, or you can tell corporate network. Corporate network. Or also we can name it technically private network. Let's keep it as a private network. So whenever I tell something about this is a private network, so what exactly I mean about this private network is, so here guys, so here what will exactly happen is under this private network, we have something called as server. Here we have something called as server. We also have something called as databases. Databases. Now, whenever I tell something about servers databases, so exactly how it exactly works is, so whenever you go for the server databases, this particular server is connected to this database. Okay. There is a connection in between the server and database. So here, if I want to access this database, okay, so this is basically client. Client is nothing but he is one of the person who is outside of the network. So from some another place who is not connected to the Wi-Fi of the office or something like that. Or you can also tell who is the present person who is working under the same office. He wants to access this database. Now exactly what will happen is we have two scenarios. Either this client can be the outside person who want to access the internal network of the complete corporate network, or else he can be the person who is inside the firewall itself, but still inside the network itself, but still he want to access the database and firewall. So here exactly what happens is, let's assume that this client is some outsider who basically want to access the server and the who basically want to access the database. So exactly what this person will do is, here in between we have something called as firewall. This is basically the firewall. So this firewall is nothing but guys, it is going to be the this firewall is nothing but this firewall is basically going to be the gateway from where all the users who want to access the database, all the users who want to access the internal you can tell either servers, either databases, whatever resources are present in the private network. If you want to access it, it is mandatory that you need to build the connection through this firewall itself. There is no other way. The whole complete network is completely isolated. Whenever I tell something about isolated, isolation is nothing but you are basically going to make it completely private, so no one can come from other side. So there is basically one entry point, and that particular entry point is going to be your firewall of the particular network. Now, if I basically have firewall in one particular network, and now I want to access, just a second. Yeah, if I basically have firewall and now I want to access some database inside the private network. So what I can do is, first thing, as a client, I have a IP address. So I guess everyone know each and every computer has a IP address over the internet. Now, whenever you basically wants to access the database, you wants to download one file, you want to upload one file, that time client is going to come and request the firewall to basically allow it inside the private network, and then there will be a connection built between the there will be a connection. That particular request will basically client's request will go through the firewall. Once the firewall checks that the network is legit, IP address is legit, then it is going to let the particular client inside the network, and that request is carried out to the server. And once that request is carried out to the server is going to compute the request, and it is going to forward that request to the database. So this is the whole process. Now, whenever you go for this firewall, how exactly this firewall is going to determine whether the IP address is legit or fake? Or here we have two scenarios, guys. Whenever you go for an IP address, either an IP address can be an legit IP address or else it can also be a fake IP address. Fake IP address is nothing but people who use VPNs, people who try to proxy, and people who try to hide their identity. So you don't want someone who is basically a fake person who is trying to hide his identity to get into the private network. So that is the reason why we have a firewall here to limit the access in the internal network. So under this internal network, there are only few people who will be able to access this particular databases, access the particular servers, and access. So basically, will be allowed to build the connection with the server. So these everything will be completely limited. So the reason why we are limiting this whole thing is because so no one from outsider is nothing but it is technically called as intruder. So who is basically intruder? Intruder is the one person who tries to get in with unauthorized access. So he is not authorized to basically come and build a connection inside this particular server. Yeah, he is basically not allowed. He is basically not allowed to come and build connection with this particular server. So what he will do is he will try to replicate his IP address. He will try to bypass the firewall. He will do n number of different types of attacks, or he will try to bypass a lot of things he can do. So to basically avoid this all things, we have firewall. Now, how firewall is basically going to stop this intruder is we have something called as rule sets. Rule sets. Rule sets are nothing but these are basically set of rules, set of rules used to configure the firewall. Yeah, set of rules to configure the firewall for improving the security of the organization. Rule sets. So whenever you go for these rule sets, these are nothing but set of rules which we basically use to configure the firewall. In this particular firewall, I can basically give a rule. Whoever tries to, whichever IP address is not registered or whichever device is not registered, from that device, if I am getting any kind of connection, they are basically trying to build the connection, then directly I will basically ask this firewall to block the request, block that particular request, and blacklist this particular IP address. So whatever this IP address is there, let's say it is 10.0.2.18. So whenever this 10.0.8 0.2.18 tries to build a connection with the database or server, and it is not a legit IP address, or it is not the registered IP address, and it is completely unauthorized, and it basically failed to show its identity, that particular IP address, then I'll just ask the firewall. I can basically set a rule to directly block that particular access. So that is why we basically create the rule sets. So based upon this rule sets, only firewalls are going to act. So based upon this rule sets, I can basically ask the firewall to either block the IP, to allow the IP, to allow the IP to download the data, to allow the IP to upload the data, to allow the IP to delete, view, or do lot of actions on the databases or any of the other resources which are present inside the private network. So for this, we basically require firewall. So clear guys, anyone have any doubts still here about firewalls? So definition, if you go for technically definition, so a firewall is a network security device that monitors and controls the incoming and outgoing traffic. That exactly you can remember. So let me just write here. Just a second. I'll just paste it here. I'll just mention the definition here. A network security device used to monitor the incoming and outgoing traffic based on the predefined security rules. Rules or rule sets also you can tell technically. So this is the basic definition. Just try to remember this definition, guys. Try to remember this definition. So whenever you go for a firewall, this is the exact definition. So I hope everyone understood how exactly firewall works and what is the meaning of the firewall. Let clear, guys, everyone. What are the approaches used to break the firewall? So whenever you go to approaches to break the firewall is either you basically go and sir, what if the clients use proxy and how will the firewall will detect the between the intruder and the clients? See, if you basically have proxy, whenever there is basically a rule set defining that if someone is using the proxy and he is not allowed to enter the traffic, then it is must that that particular, if he is basically a client, then he definitely need to turn off his proxy and then only he will be allowed to use the firewall. Otherwise, there is no other way to get into the network if he is a legit one. But if it is a fake IP address and still he is the proxy, he is using the proxy, then firewall will definitely be able to detect the particular change in the IP address. See guys, whenever you go for proxies, one thing I want to mention here, just try to remember this. So guys, whenever you go for proxies, let me just tell you how exactly proxies works. So under these proxies, we got something called as now is it clear, guys? My voice? Anyone having any problem with my voice? So the network may fluctuate for 1 to 2 seconds, guys. But if there is a continuous problem, you can just let me know, guys. Okay. So whenever you go for proxies, guys, just try to remember one thing with proxies is that whenever you go for proxies, so these proxies are they basically use multiple locations. Okay. So whenever I tell about proxy, why we basically use proxy, the main reason of using proxy. The main reason of use proxy is to hide the identity So guys, whenever you go for proxies, we basically use these proxies to hide the identity. To hide the identity. So whenever I tell what is the exact mechanism to hide the identity is, so people what they do is they basically use multiple locations. So they basically use first bullet is they basically use multiple locations. So whenever I tell multiple locations, automatically we got something called as multiple IP addresses. Multiple IPs. So whenever they are using this multiple IPs and whenever they are shifting to multiple locations, what exactly will happen is, so under the proxies, we have something called as hops. Technically, we call them as hops. So exactly how it will be is, let's say from here, you're trying to access this particular server. Okay. Whenever you're trying to access this particular server, so exactly what will happen is in between. So let's say this is the location of New York. This is the location of Ireland, Singapore, and then you got something called as China. Then you got Russia. Then you got Vietnam, and here is the exact location. Now here what will exactly happen is whenever a user is trying to access from this point, so here the network will flow from one location to again another location, again another location, again another location, and like this it will basically continue to multiple locations. So in between here, whenever you observe, so they are basically six multiple locations. They are basically six multiple locations. And whenever it is six multiple locations, at this point, the IP address will be different. At this point, the IP address will be different. This point, the IP address will be different. This point, the IP address will be different. Here, the IP address will be different. Here again different, and here again different. So these six locations will have six multiple different IP addresses. So whenever a client is trying to access, so firewall, what it will do is, it will basically, whenever we set a rule, it basically has the rule sets. That time it will make sure that it will identify the particular IP address based upon the proxies from where exactly the location. If see, whenever a person is using the proxy, so if this is basically the location he is trying to access, then if in between here you have a firewall, here if you basically have a firewall, what exactly will happen is, if firewall is unable to basically get the legit address of this particular client, and it is basically identified like this particular client is using a proxy, then it will directly block the connection, and it might also blacklist the connection, whoever is using the proxies, until the administrator will try to bring the back the IP address, the to bring back the particular user from out of the blacklist. Till that time, this particular user will remain in that particular blacklist forever. So that is how firewalls basically depend on rule sets, and they try to either block the IP addresses, either what is proxy, sir. Surya, that is what I'm trying to explain. See, whenever you're using a proxy, what exactly you will do is, it is just like you will basically try to hide your original location. If here your original location is Hyderabad, if here your original location is Hyderabad, so whenever you use proxy, so here you will basically have another location called either USA, let's say US. Here you got UK. Here you got UK. Here you got something called as Europe. Here you got Europe, and here you got another location called France, another location called Africa. So like this, you will use multiple locations in between to build a connection with the server. So here you are hiding the identity that you are from Hyderabad. You are faking your identity that you are from US, you are from UK, you are from Europe, and then France, and then America. So like this, whenever you basically use multiple locations, this is basically called as proxy. So what is the strength capacity of a basic firewall? See, strength capacity of a basic firewall, basically depends on what type of firewalls you are trying to use. So here we got something called as network intrusion detection system, host-based intrusion detection system. So whenever you go for networking part, networking firewall, whenever it uses the networking part, its strength is to basically defend the complete private network with only limited access to the particular users. It is not going to allow each and every user to enter and access all your servers, databases, and everything. That completely depends on how you configure the particular firewall. The number of rule sets you give, the number of rules you give, the number of triggers you give. See, guys, it is like whenever it finds a fake IP address trying to build an access, who is basically using the proxy, or unknown user is there from unknown location, that time it can either block, or it can either give an alert to the administrator. Two ways are there. See, here it can either basically give an alert. Alert is nothing but whenever it gives an alert, so here what will exactly happen? The administrator will come and he will look into IP address. He will try to fix whether it is legit or fake. Then he will take the action. Second one is, it can directly block the particular IP address. If it directly blocks the particular IP address, it will exactly be blacklisted. So it completely depends on the number of rule sets, number of triggers, number of alerts, how you basically define and configure the particular firewall. Now, under this firewalls also, you got two concepts. One is intrusion detection system, and another one is intrusion prevention system. So as I told, whenever you go for intrusion detection system, this basically exactly what intrusion detection system will do is, it will try to detect, first thing it will try to detect and alert the admin. And whenever you go for intrusion prevention system, these are basically two types of firewalls, guys. Intrusion prevention system, what exactly it will do? It will go and directly directly block the access of the intruder. So these are basically two things. So here, let me just write intrusion detection, intrusion detection system. And again, you have intrusion prevention system. So whenever we basically called the person who is trying to access intruder, then we basically got two ways: intrusion prevention and intrusion detection system. Sir, what people nowadays are AI instead of firewalls. Can AI be trusted on? See, AI is never basically getting into security. It is nothing like that. Trusted on, please share your opinion. So AI is never getting to this part. So basically AI in security is used to automate things, but from scratch you need to only define everything. So in future it is going to automate. You don't need to again and again. Let's say if I want to deploy one particular firewall, here, and what AI can do is here I will give all the rule sets, rules, everything I will give on my own. If you basically want to replicate this firewall and deploy another firewall, here AI can automate this process. It can just copy and paste. That's it. That is what AI can do in the security. But whenever it comes to security, AI has never been trusted. Sir, is there any connection between AI and cybersecurity? See, I just told, if you are already defining the whole process and you want the same process to be pasted whenever requirement is there, then AI can see the chance where it can basically implement that, and that time it will implement. Nothing like it is going to define all the rules and everything. That is not, still not into cyber security. Still we need lot of research and development to basically implement that part. So I agree on what you just said, sir, but AI is still dangerous. Yeah, it is dangerous. It is basically how you use it. If you're using your own modules, your own APIs, and you're trying to do it on your own, then fine, no problem. But if you're trusting on third parties and you're giving all your data, then it is really difficult, guys. So guys, so just one thing, what I want you guys to do is just try to search for types of firewalls. Types of firewalls. And also you can, one is basically types of firewalls. Second one is you got what are the applications on firewall. Types of firewalls is okay, guys. And one more thing what I want to do is give me names of firewalls. Names of firewalls which are often used by corporates. Just try to look into this too. Guys, listen carefully. Try to look into types of firewalls and name of the firewalls which are by often used by names of firewalls which are often used to implement in for network security. Just try to search on Google or try to get some notes on these 2 points.